Allison perhaps can locate the link to the report on the website and is already doing so, as she is indicating to me. Thank you, Allison. Hi, I'm Mallory, in case you've forgotten. I was not at ASTC, sad I didn't get to see everyone, but excited to see everyone now to talk about the Aggregate report. We're going to cover a couple of different things today. So first, we're just going to look at a couple of pieces of the report. Of course, we encourage you to take your own time and look at the report in depth on the website, and eventually we will get you a paper copy, we hope. We're also going to talk about using the report in sort of line with your dashboard, so making sure that you can get the dashboard open, and then how to use filters on the dashboard to make comparisons between data points that we reference in the report and your own site's data to compare yourself to sort of the benchmark set by our report. And then Allison is going to take over to talk about ways that we can ask questions of the data that will be useful to you at your site. So starting with that report, which again, you could go access in the chat right now. Exciting, wonderful. So I'm just going to go over a couple of key findings. This is not comprehensive, starting with NPS or Net Promoter Score. So this is one of our experience measures where we ask visitors to rate on a scale from 0 to 10 how likely they are to recommend the museum to a friend or colleague. As you can see, 74.5 is our overall aggregate NPS score for the 2025 fiscal year, which covers summer of 2024 through the beginning of summer 2025, if you're wondering. With 79% of the visitors that we've polled being promoters, 18% passive, and 4% detractors. And you can also see the range here at the bottom. So you can see each one of these dots is a institution and their NPS, and you can see where our sort of aggregate average falls in the middle there. Is that an average or is it a median, Ryan? I can't recall.
It's just the aggregate. It's
Oh,
all
it's the
sites
aggregate. You're
together
right.
without taking sites into
Yep.
consideration.
And this is how this is calculated, actually. It's literally right here on the slide. Very silly of me. So you take promoters minus detractors, you get 74.5. Very cool. All right. We also ask about OERs. Please rate your overall experience at the museum today. We asked two different kinds of experience ratings because we could get two different kinds of answers to these questions, as is detailed in the report. For this one, we see that really an astounding amount of people are having either an excellent or an outstanding time at the museum, which is awesome. Only 10% of people are having less than an excellent time at their museum visit, which is really, really awesome, especially since excellent and outstanding are our highest categories. We also ask visitors to rate specific experiences within the institution, such as staff member helpfulness, the exhibits are working, value for the cost, on a scale from 0 to 10. And as you can see, all of the things that we ask about are, well, almost all of them are above 9. Only one of them is below 9, and it's still very close to 9. So everything here is really close to the top. And you can see these numbers for your own institution on your dashboard, which I will talk about a little bit later and see how you're stacking up here. But especially staff member helpfulness and restroom cleanliness tend to be rated very highly, which is really cool to see. We love when our staff members are helpful and our bathrooms are clean. We also talk about a lot of different demographics in the report. I'm going to focus on a really small subset of what is in the report here. We took a look at 4 different kind of group divisions for this report this year. And the one that I have here up on the screen is comparing groups that consist only of adults to groups that have children in them. Obviously, this is something that differs a lot between art museums and science museums. So we were interested in taking a look at some of the demographics and how things sort of shake out with these two groups. So, uh, as you can see, the average number of adults in the group is pretty much the same, regardless of whether there's also a child. Almost 2 children on average per group with children in it. Whoa. But even more interestingly, we could take a look at some other demographics like education. So we can see that groups with kids, which is in purple here, and adult-only groups, which is in teal, are shaking out pretty similarly in terms of their education levels, and pretty similarly in terms of LGBTQ plus identification, with adult-only groups tending to have more LGBTQ plus identifying members, which is interesting to see. So moving on, we are going to sort of dive into how we can use this with the dashboard. So this is the interesting part. So first of all, we encourage you to have your dashboard open during this call. If you're from an institution that doesn't have your dashboard yet or has forgotten how to get into your dashboard, we encourage you to use our demo dashboard. So we have a demo dashboard. You can go to login.qualtrics.com and sign in using this username and password, which Allison and Ryan will put in the chat as well as I move on so that you don't have to like erase to sign in right now. And then this account that has the demo dashboard has both the Science Plus and our Aggregate dashboards for you to take a peek at. So whether you're a science center or an art museum, you can find whichever one of those aggregate dashboards you want to take a look at for these purposes, um, and open that up. And I'm going to move on to this next slide here. So if you've forgotten your password or you've signed into Qualtrics, but you can't see your dashboard for your site or something else is wrong with your account, um, please reach out to us after this call, send us an email. And for right now, we encourage you to just use the demo dashboard. We would be happy to troubleshoot these issues for you, but it's challenging when all of our team members are here on the phone. Um, if there is something, if you can get your dashboard open, but there's something wrong with it, you're not seeing the right data, there are numbers instead of exhibit names, certain widgets are looking wrong. That's also something that we do want to know about, but unfortunately can't take a look at right this second. And ideally, these things won't affect your experience today. And if they are, again, we encourage you to open up that demo dashboard and take a look at that instead. All right. So, presuming that you have the dashboard open, you should be seeing
So
something like this.
can we pause for just a second and let folks log in? Because I know I was moving fast to
Yeah,
try to log in. So
yeah, it's definitely just wanted to say like here's like sort of where we're meeting. And then take like a
cool.
breather here.
Awesome.
Um, the one that you're seeing on the screen right now, for what it's worth, this is our science aggregate. So if you are logged into the demo dashboard and open the science aggregate, this is from a few days ago, so it won't look exactly like this, but it should look pretty similar.
I see the green check on Sarah's screen. I think that's the okay to proceed. Hopefully everyone's gotten login information. Karen or anyone else, if you need the login information, it's in the chat and you can message me directly for troubleshooting on the call.
Awesome. Wonderful. So hopefully, looking at your dashboard, you're seeing something that looks vaguely like this, with Net Promoter Score and overall experience rating, which we just talked about up here at the top. These are pretty straightforward to be able to compare, but in order to make sure that we're comparing correctly, the first thing we want to do is limit the dashboard to the fiscal year that the report covers to make sure that we're comparing your data from the report year to the report. And in order to do that, we're going to use the filters that are here at the very top of the dashboard. So this top image is close to what you should theoretically be seeing. You'll see that the date is usually defaulted to show only data from this year. That might be not be true on your personal dashboard. It's true on the aggregate because the aggregate includes a lot of data, and if we loaded it all at once, it would be hard to load. So if you're on the demo dashboard, you should see this here. If you're on your own dashboard, you may see something else here. But making sure that instead of this year, we are looking at all time, and then we are going to use this sort of filter at the very end here called fiscal year to limit it to just FY25. So FY26 is what we're doing right now, but FY25 is what we just reported on. So we want to make sure that we have FY25, but we don't want to limit it to just this year because part of last year was also FY25. Um, Feel free to play around, on your own time whenever you would like to with these other filters that are very fun. So things like the institution size, AAM region, whether the museum is child focused or not, and you can go in and see different fiscal years as well, depending on how long your institution has participated, or if you're looking at the aggregate, you should be able to do that, going all the way back to the start of COVES. Uh,
Mallory, can you say that again? Because when I'm looking, the things you circled, it looks like the fiscal year is correct for this fiscal year 25.
Yeah.
Can you sorry, say again, like why those have to be different?
So it should say FY25. This is correct.
Right,
I'm
but at the
not.
top,
If
this
you
year
This
and
is
all
the
time.
default for the aggregate dashboard. So I've changed it so that it's
Wait,
FY25.
I think what you're asking, Sarah,
Mhm.
when you have two time filters at the same time, they make the dashboard do weird things. So we want
So
to
this
say,
year is referring to calendar year.
yep.
So if I turned FY25 on without turning this year into all time, it would only be showing me things starting in January, but FY25 goes back to last July.
Oh,
And I
okay,
want to
thank you.
see that too. So these are
Okay,
two different time periods. So fiscal year for COVES purposes goes from July to June. So I want to make sure that I'm not just getting January to June.
okay. So and Qualtrics dates are calendar
Qualtrics dates
based.
are
Is
calendar
that?
year. Yeah.
Thank you. I missed that.
Anytime there are two dates selected as a filter, whether on an individual widget or at the top, there'll be a conflict, and either the dashboard will just yell at you and tell you can't display data, or it will pick one, and it's not always clear which one's getting filtered. So whenever possible, you only want to be using one date related filter at a time. So when if you stack them on top of each other, as Mallory was saying, it's just going to give you January through July. If you do date all time and then fiscal year, it'll just filter to that fiscal year.
Awesome. Thank you.
Basically, anytime you try to use the same variable in different chunking,
Mhm.
Qualtrics does not like that.
Yeah. So for example, if I had limited it to just fiscal year 25, but then I also told it through the date filter to only tell me things from like this week, it would be like there's no data because it's impossible for it to have been this week because this week is FY26.
Okay.
So it wouldn't show up under FY25 at all.
I'm not, is there supposed to be an option that just indicates fiscal year, or am I supposed to be plugging in July
Um,
through
on
June?
most dashboards, there should be. If not, it is something that you can add, I believe, unless I'm wrong. I'm saying this as a question so that Allison can correct me if I'm wrong. But
Hypothetically, yes, you should add it. If you can't, ping us and we will do it. I don't know that we can do it fast enough in the moment,
Okay.
but they should be there.
Yeah, there's no fiscal year option as date for me. I
if
can enter
you're
a custom date range.
Yeah,
custom
so
date range is
it's
the
a
workaround.
different, it's not under date, so it would be under its own sort of variable here as it is on the slides.
It looks like
If
it's
you go to a custom date range and enter, it'll be July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 is that
Okay,
fiscal year 2025 range of dates, which someone who is not me can put in the chat. You don't have
Ryan
to
has
keep
already
that in your
done that.
brain.
great.
Love it.
Add yourself to the thread that it's not there, and after this call, I will do some double checking and cleaning and make sure that's
Yeah, but if you do need to jerry rig that date for the purposes of this call, you totally can.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Is there any other questions on date filtering? Or am I good to move on?
Looks like lots of groups are not seeing that fiscal year filter. So
Very
What
fun.
what was the
there's a
what was the custom range that you choose again? I have custom range pulled up that you said.
It's
It's
July 1st, 2024 until June 30th, 2025. And that should be in the chat as well. All right, I'm gonna give everyone like 30 seconds to figure this out. Appreciate your patience. Qualtrics dashboards are funky.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering about that. Nick posted it. If your screen is really wide, it might not look like what Mallory has up here. Child focused museum, fiscal year, maybe way over to the right at the top of your screen.
Yeah, these are just screenshots of my like laptop screen. So this is just the size that the dashboard was. But if it has enough space, it'll put it all in one line.
Oh, thanks, Summer, for posting that for your own institution. It doesn't work. Okay.
All right. I'm going to move forward unless anyone yells at me in the next 10 seconds not to. Okay, no one is yelling at me, so I think no one will. Okay. So now that we have, this is the data that you will be able to use to compare to the report that is the same date range that we used in the report. Um, so when we were talking about the report a minute ago, I showed us the comparisons between adult-only groups and groups with children. So there should be a widget on the dashboard. This is from that aggregate science dashboard again, that shows the number of children in the group, with 0 or no children in the group being this big red bar, which if you're looking at your own institution, I hope that the distribution of bars maybe looks a little different, varies a little bit from this image. Um, if I want to look at the whole data set, but I only want to know about responses from adult-only groups, then I'm going to filter down to adult-only groups by clicking on this red bar on my dashboard, which should apply to all of the widgets of filter that just limits it so that it's only showing responses from groups that did not have children with them. Once I've done this, Sarah looks like confused. No?
I think it now. Oh, yep. Okay, I got it. 0. Big old 0. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. So once you do that, this should be the only bar that you see on this widget. The blue bar should go away once you've clicked it. Okay. This applies to all the other widgets and not just this one, which means that I can move. So this here is from the dashboard. This is my education widget. You might have 2 different education level widgets. I hope one of them is empty because one of them we only used before FY25 and the other one is used after. So hopefully there should only be data in one. Um, and this is the sort of education levels. And we ask a lot more education levels and then condense it for the purposes of reporting. So these 4 education levels here are all condensed for the purposes of our report into less than college. So I can add up 1 plus 8 plus 7 plus 15 is 31. Someone nod at me or shake their head. Love it. Thank you, Sarah. I did that math real fast. So you can see that that percentage is actually a lot higher than the adult-only group that we reported having less than a college education. So 31% versus the teal bar here shows that 21% of the groups in the overall report had less than a college education. You can also see that graduate degrees are a lot lower of a percentage, only 29% versus 37% in the aggregate report. The reason why this is happening is because this is a science plus dashboard. So this sort of graph in the report is everybody. So this is science and art, all sorts of people. So, and for your institution, it could be any number of things sort of driving these types of differences. And Allison will talk more about asking questions like that later. But this is one way that you could make a comparison between the data that exists on your dashboard and the report that we put out annually. Maybe though I want to look at groups with kids. So after you've clicked on that red bar, what it actually does is apply a new filter at that top sort of area that we were looking at before when we were filtering by date. It should be called End Child Recode or something similar. And if I only want to look at groups with kids instead of groups without kids, you can go in there. It should have a range from 0 to 4 because those are the values that we use for this widget. And it should just be showing 0. That's what we clicked on. Only I'm seeing faces like people aren't saying it. No, not up at the top.
No.
It might have a longer name, but it should start with N child or N adult. I think N child should. This is the fun thing
Sorry,
about
can you
all
back
the
up and tell us
dashboards.
where we're looking? Because I
This is
missed.
back up at the top. So if you scroll back to the top of the dashboard, there should be a line of filters. We looked at it when we were filtering by date to make sure things were set to like all time and like doing the fiscal year dates. up there, there should now be a new entry that has end child in it. Um, okay. I'm seeing some like good faces and some bad ones.
Is it under advanced filters? Because that's the only option.
Is it under advanced filters? Not
Make
looking at the dashboard in this moment for me is
it
very
shouldn't
prohibitive.
be. It
No,
should,
it's underneath that line that says advanced filter. If you clicked on the red bar, it should show in child in the next line, next to reset to default.
I'm seeing some agreement with that.
We don't. I don't have it.
I see a comment in the chat that says I refreshed our dashboard and I see it now. So
Oh,
maybe refreshing the page might help. And then depending on how stuck we are with this, just for visual location, maybe we could toggle screen shares and Allison can pull up the dashboard in real time to do the
yeah,
visual instead
I
of the
mean, I
screen.
could also do that
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
would like me
yeah.
to.
whomever. Yep, yep.
Just since I'm already screen sharing. So let me stop share for a moment so that I can make sure I get into the right account.
Link is on the back.
And I'm going to topics. Okay. So
Unaware.
this is now, I've just opened my account for, this is our demo account. So if you have the demo dashboard open, it's exactly what you should be seeing. So it looks like it's already set so that the date is all time. This is the filter bar here at the top. And the fiscal year is set to FY25. So that all looks good. What we did to filter to adult only groups was go down to the visitor group information and demographics down here. And this is that red bar that I showed. And when I click it, you could see now this red bar has been highlighted. And up here at the top, a new sort of filter option has appeared called End Child Recode. So this bar up here is where we should be looking.
And we should only be looking at this aggregate data summary for science museum types.
You can look at any dashboard you have access to. You do this on the art aggregate
Yeah.
dashboard. You could do it on your own museum's dashboard if you have
Okay.
access to it. You might not yet because we don't, give you the dashboard right to start because you don't have any data yet.
Right.
If you didn't collect data during the fiscal year 2025, then this is going to be looking a little light or completely empty in terms of data as well. So offering the demo dashboard gives us access to these aggregates to play with.
So it looks like there are some filter features that are available in the science aggregate that are not available in like our institutionals
Interesting.
dashboard.
Super interesting. You should be able to add them. I can't because I am on the demo account. But ideally, you should be able to add custom filters on your own dashboard.
Should being a keyword here. I love when we real time poke at Qualtrics and see where it needs some attention.
Mhm. It's part of the point of the call is to let us know where we need to be looking. Yeah.
Mallory, is it where you do the advanced filters and insert new conditions? Is that where you add a new
Yeah.
filter?
Yeah. You should be
Okay.
able to be
Okay.
like, I want to look at only people who, I don't know, came here to relax and relieve stress and to also they felt they strongly agreed to feel like you can add multiple sort of different conditions together. And Um, with any of these different widgets, you should just also be able to create the filter by clicking. So if I want to look at adult only groups who came to relax and relieve stress, I just now have to click on to relax and relieve stress. And it's only people who checked that motivation option now as well. And you can see that has now also appeared at the top. And I can pick a different motivation or more than one motivation. Um, or I can do any motivate, not that that would be useful, but anything you want. And you can see it sticks around even after I've reset it back to all. So just for clarity, once we get to the point of, if you are able to get to the point of having this sort of end child recode at the top, the way that you would swap it over. So right now it's only showing me people who had 0 children in their group. If I want to know about people who had anything other than 0 children in their group, I just sort of limit it from 1 to 4, which are all of the options here that are not 0. And so you can see now it's showing me groups with children. And I can look at the differences, for example, in education, like we were doing before, which is down here. And here's where I mentioned we have 2 widgets for education. One of them is empty, the other one is not. Are people having at least like meddling success? I can't see the chat, by the way, as I'm presenting.
The
So
Yeah,
chat is,
right. I
the
think
chat
Ryan
is
and Allison are doing a good job fielding stuff.
The chat is full of good
Mhm.
comments. Allison is posting some helpful tips. We've gotten a lot of individual recognition that I don't see it, I don't have it, I can't find it. So by putting that in the chat, we'll be able to focus on your dashboard, create those necessary filters after this call. So keep putting that in the chat as you discover things that you can or can't find to help us.
It'll be our checklist for fixing.
mhm.
And we do apologize because once we set this up, we copy the dashboards over, so the filters copy over, and then Qualtrics has a mind of its own and tends to reset some things. So these should be there, but we're sorry they're not, if they're not.
So, Mallory, you just suggested, you can compare no kids versus 1 to 4 kids. Um, how would you suggest doing that? Because when I'm running it, I know that some people said they have to refresh their screen, but all the things change immediately.
Mhm.
How do I get those two to compare with each other? Is
So
there
to
a way to
compare
print
with
them
each
off?
other at your own institution, one thing you can always do, I actually don't know if I have permission on this account, but you are always able to export your dashboard at any time with the filters that you've applied on, so that it will
Mm,
save a copy, usually like a PDF or some kind of Word document that you are able to use as a reference so that you can then compare and contrast. Unfortunately, there's not a super easy way for us to introduce a bunch of those comparisons and have them all like appear and populate on the same screen
mm.
and look exactly the way that it does in our report, because Qualtrics doesn't have that functionality. If you are just wanting to compare like one group to the report and then the other group to the report, you could do those one at a time. You could export the dashboard one at a time as you've applied the filters. Um, that is what I would recommend for that.
When you, I'm pretty sure we didn't give the permissions on demo. It might be on some of the demo dashboard, but when you're hovering on the top right of a widget, if Mallory just where it says pin to homepage on your access, not on the demo, it should have a export option. And if you click export, it'll give you options on how to export that. Um, because we give the demo out at conferences, we don't want people to be able to export the data. But yours should have that permission, and you can export it as a PDF or a JPEG, or if you export as CSV or Excel as a data file, it'll give you the data for that widget filtered for those
Whatever
filters. So
filters, yeah.
it would be number of children in group 1, 42% to 37%, etc.
Another thing, if you're feeling really Qualtrics confident, which I'm sure like none of us are, but if you are and you want to screw around with private pages, that's another way that I could see people going about doing something like that, is being able to open a private page and either copy widgets that already exist over to that private page or create new versions of those widgets. And then you can apply some widgets allow you to filter just that widget instead of having the filter apply to the whole page. So if I wanted one filter that maybe shows me the education levels for all my data from the month of January, and then a different one that just shows February. I can create filters that apply to just those widgets that are like this data is just January and this data is just February. So that's another way that you could do something like that, is to create private pages and mess around in there. And we did have a webinar, I believe, about private pages that is available on our YouTube. But if you want that, either Ryan can be in charge of finding that link so fast, or we could just send it out later if he doesn't think he can do that.
Gretchen did that one. I'm
That was
also
Gretchen.
trying to
Yay,
find
we
it.
miss you, Gretchen. Yeah.
It was a very good one on that.
I am going to jump us back over the slides if now feels like a good time.
Um,
Move really
yes.
fast away.
So,
By the way, just as a reminder, before I pass over to Allison really quickly, when you are in your personal dashboard account, you can also see the aggregates. You should also have access to them. If you do not, shoot us a message. You should. Um, there are lots of reasons why the aggregate dashboard itself will also look different than the report. Number one, as I mentioned, the dashboards are split by cohort. The report is not. Number two, we do statistical weighting for our report. So we sort of make sure that large institutions and small institutions all have their data sort of count for the same. We talk about that in the report, but that sort of changes the data from the more raw form it's in on the dashboard. Three, we have inclusion criteria for the report. You have to have, there are several different criteria. I know one of them is that less than a third of your data must be collected with the QR code. But there are a couple different ones that we have. If a site doesn't meet the inclusion criteria, we don't have its data in the report, but the data is on the dashboard, so you can still see it there. And primarily, the aggregate dashboard and the report are two different lenses for comparing to a benchmark. If you only wanted to look at, for example, at science centers to compare your science center to, or art museums to compare your art museum to, that is one good option. All right, now I will pass to Allison, who will tell me when she wants to change the slide.
yes. Um, so purpose of this is to think about how do we share not just our data, but share the aggregate report and how that can meaningfully support some of the conversations you're having internally. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge that I do not know all the context of your museum, so I'm going to talk in generalities. You know your colleagues well, you know your museum's organizational culture, you know your institutional priorities far better than we ever can. So keep that in mind of when we're thinking about the prompts that we might have, what might ring true with your colleagues or in that context, in terms of like what you're sharing, how you're sharing it, and how you have those conversations. This is supposed to be a jumping off point to start having those conversations, and hopefully we can continue to support that. Sorry, reading the comment, which is a better benchmark comparison, aggregate data dashboard, or the comparison in our individual institution report. I think you're talking about the ones that you share with Art Bridges or are shared with you. Is that correct? Yes. It depends on the question you're asking of the data. So that's not a super helpful answer, unfortunately. Um, but it depends on what you're asking. I would say if you're trying to do a very big picture comparison of here we are in the field using the aggregate data dashboard or using the report because it's a nice citable thing. Um, if you are focused on priorities that align with your Bridges priorities, maybe that's when you would use your institutional individual report. So unfortunately, it depends. But yeah, for OER, NPS demographics, I think using the report because it is citable is really helpful. But if you are gut checking things throughout the year using that dashboard, because then you can make sure the filters are the same as the ones you are currently filtering your data with. All right, next slide. So as you all know, there's a lot of data that COVES has, and when you're thinking about sharing data with, as you're comparing it to the aggregate or citing that report, here are some questions to think about in which data you're choosing. What coves or other data do you already share with the museum, with your colleagues? So this gets into um, the language of sharing and how much time you're going to need to take to prep your colleagues for, like, this is what an NPS score means, and this is how it works, and this is how we interpret it, versus if it's one um, if it's a conversation you've already had, you can kind of jump into that more easily. Thinking about who you're sharing the data with. If you're talking to your C-suite, that might be pulling those bigger numbers like Net Promoter Score and OER. If you're talking to individual departments, you might find ratings or other data in the set that are more applicable, thinking about which demographics you want to pull when thinking about your institutional priorities. This data should be useful. And anytime we are sharing this much data, trying to narrow it down and thinking about what data shows areas to improve as well as to celebrate. So we're not just looking at what are we doing as well as we would like to. So basically narrow it down to a few data points at a time when you're sharing this if you haven't been sharing it regularly or you don't have a process for that yet. Next slide. There are a lot of different ways to share data that we've heard, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. But if you have creative ideas, please share them in the chat. This could be setting up a meeting with a small group of stakeholders to discuss some data. You could create like a mini one-pager, two-page report that you add some context to it. You could share bits of the aggregate report along data you're already sharing. We have one colleague that would just write their data just straight on the report and share it that way. There's a lot of ways to share it. Again, I suggest if you haven't shared data before, picking a few data points rather than the whole data set. Next slide. And this is all to the point of having conversations around the data and using those data. So here are some question prompts. These are not all the question prompts, but I think these are helpful to think about when you are presenting this data to your colleagues. What do they think is happening in the data? What do you think is happening in the data? If you've been participating long enough to have overtime data, how have those changed over time? Is your net promoter score going up, going down, staying about the same? Are your demographics changing over time? What do the open-ended responses tell you about ratings? So if you're sitting there going, what does this OER mean to us? Digging through some of those open-ended responses, and that's something where you could have a data party with colleagues where you go through, pull some of those responses out, and you can all read them together. I have what do you think is happening twice? My bad. Are there known factors? So at our museum, we have a lot of construction right now, and we have some expectations on how that's going to impact the data. What are those things that you know is happening and is being supported or questioned by the data that visitors are giving you? Are there ways you can test those hypotheses? Are there things you can change? Are there different ways to pick apart or look at the data? What other data in the data set? Maybe that's breaking it down by group types or by a specific demographic or a specific experience. And then to the intent of we are going to make our museums better. What could you do to improve the visitors' perceptions, or what are you doing well that you should keep doing? Next slide. A really common question is our NPS good? And what is a good NPS? And this really varies. So, as a reminder, this is measuring someone's willingness to recommend the museum and is often associated with business loyalty. Next slide. So how do you compare that to the aggregate? If our aggregate score is 74.5, if you're down in the 50s, is that a priority to try to bring that up? What does that tell you about how people perceive your museum? If you're above that point, is that something that you're not going to worry about, or do you want to keep pushing it up? But comparing that to the aggregate gives some sense of good, though that I'm going to keep good in quotes because this is um, dependent on those museum priorities. And thinking about how that changes over time is a good indicator of are you moving in a direction that you want to go or not? Next slide. Um, Similarly, is our OER good? Well, this is what the aggregate is, and here is a random unnamed museum that is about the same with combined excellent and outstanding, but their excellent's a little higher and the outstanding's a little lower. This is a really holistic measure of the quality of the experience, and this might be a good place to poke into those open-ended responses to understand what those ratings mean. And is the NPS and the OER, are these going to be metrics that your museum uses over time? Is this a snapshot? Is it something else? Uh, Next slide. So similarly, if we're thinking about how we improve our experiences, this is another place where we can look to the aggregate and say, wow, our staff members we have a really high staff member helpfulness. This is great. This might not be the place where we need to focus on change, but keep doing what we're doing because it's going well. You might have an aggregate that's like about the same, but it's lower than all of your other scores. You can point to the aggregate and say, this is typical across museums. And that doesn't mean that you wouldn't make change, but being able to ground those conversations in the bigger picture of the field. I'm going through this fast because we are running out of time and I do want to have some time for questions. So the last piece, thinking about how do you make those breakdown comparisons? Next slide. So we can just look at those single metrics by themselves, and we can also break this down into for example, in the reports, we looked at adult-only groups versus adults with children. And in the Net Promoter Score, we see that there is a difference, but it's not a huge difference between those two groups. And in this randomly selected museum, that's a much bigger gap. And I'd want to poke at why do we think that is? Why are groups with children having a much better experience than the adult only at this particular random museum? And it's also lower than our aggregate overall. And so this would be a good data point to have that conversation about what do we think is happening? What other data can we pull in to look at that? Next slide. And we see at the same randomly selected museum, the outstanding is pretty similar to each other and similar to the lower than the aggregate, but similar proportionally, whereas that excellent varies and that good varies a lot more. Again, why do we think this is happening? Where can we poke at that data and have conversations around it? And last slide. Similarly, we can look at if we're looking at staff member helpfulness, we see in the aggregate report there that adult only groups generally rate this higher, but at this random museum, this is exactly the same. And that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. I know I ran through that very fast because we are running out of time and I want to have questions and be able to talk about how we would use this data. Uh, Ryan, do you want to share this or would you rather not talk at the moment?
What, my comment?
Yeah.
I'm happy to. So I'll just read what I put in the chat. And in fact, we can stop screen sharing just to let people chat. And I also see some other comments, some direct messages to me that I think will be helpful for everyone. But I'm thinking about the questions that you posed, Allison, about how to engage with other people in your museum about the data that are relevant. And the two examples I want to highlight, one, Net Promoter Score, right? We saw a difference. We compared it to the aggregate, we compared it to ourselves over time. But the first thing that I did was check subgroup Net Promoter Scores. The member Net Promoter Score had not changed. The non-member Net Promoter Score was dropping and pulling everybody else down. So we were able to identify, quote unquote, the cause of this change and then look further for non-member attributes, where they were coming from, what they were doing, and their comments to see what we could address in the short term to correct this problem, right? Because that's non-members are a big area of focus for us in thinking about repeat or generating repeat visitation. So always look at your big numbers by the smaller groups that we've encouraged you to focus on. Members and non-members, locals and non-locals, adult-only groups, groups with kids, etc. First-time visitors, another one. Second one, attendance is lower. I wouldn't be surprised if this was true for a lot of us on this call. It is concerning, but it's sometimes out of our hands. So one thing that we did was use our demographic information to find out where visitors were coming from to see if we could find a source. Were there local members who weren't coming? Were there out-of-state visitors who weren't coming? It turns out in our case, it was the proportion of Canadian visitors. So remember, if visitors say they're not local or can't identify a zip code, they're asked to put their country of origin. And we just compared the proportion of visitors from this period of summer, Memorial Day to Labor Day, to the same period last year and extrapolated based on our attendance. So you can be creative in finding ways to use the data on the dashboard to figure out some institutional problems. Now, admittedly, this doesn't necessarily map onto the aggregate report exactly, but when handing out the aggregate report, people get really excited to then go immediately, to your institutional data. Like it's fun to look at the big picture stuff, but you want to figure out how that applies to you. So those questions that Allison encouraged you to poke when you're going through this can be really valuable in addressing why things are changing or where the issues are that you can fix. I feel like, oh, I was going to say something else. So Brett, I saw your message and I'm just going to read it out loud because I think this applies to everyone. Brett is essentially getting the spinning wheel of death, but the Qualtrics dashboard version, right? Like it's spinning and spinning and spinning, but nothing's changing. As a reminder, there are tens of thousands of data points in the background of these dashboards. Sometimes when you click on them, it moves pretty fast. Depending on your internet connection or the number of filters you apply and what your computer is trying to do, the website just lags. There's so much data in there that makes it a rich resource for us, but sometimes that means the filtering is very slow. Refreshing the page can help, logging out and logging back in, right? Like all the IT problems. I don't think you need to unplug your machine and plug it back in, but basically all of those standard tools or tricks should work. If it's still not working, let us know and we'll see if there's something going on in the back end. But the short story is nothing about your data are causing those spinning wheels. If you filter down to the point where you don't have sufficient data, the widget will actually it will be blank and it should tell you that you've been too exclusive with your filters for the data to present themselves. So it will be explicit. And then, Sarah, I'm going to just say this out loud too. The question was, do we have images or slides for you all to use if you want to present this information internally or whatever? And the answer is sort of. We have high resolution images of the pages, which you can then screenshot or snip to put into presentations. And we're happy to post those as well so that you all can start creating PowerPoints or Canva presentations to share with colleagues. Or you could just snip them from the report. But again, I think the high resolution images that we have might be more helpful. And Sarah, yes, go ahead.
This is kind of funny for me. Uh, longtime fan, first time aggregate dashboard user here. I've been part of COVES as part of the background team, behind the scenes team for 8 years, 10 years now, but I've never played with the dashboard because I'm not associated with an institution. You said that different ways of looking at the data is interesting, insightful for having conversations and thinking about where is a given institution compared to the aggregate, compared to one of our fiscal or calendar year reports. When I ran something for the fiscal year and the net promoter score, I think, or the OER were really different than what we had on the slides or than what we see in the fiscal year 25 report. It felt different to me. I'm wondering, is there a way for us to, at some point further down the line, make the Qualtrics numbers represent the weighted, clean, beautifully cleaned data set that's used in the aggregate reports? And I'm thinking about this in particular of like looking at some of those charts where the report is this horizontal bar chart, and then if I take a screenshot of my dashboard, it's circles, hopefully very full circles. And just thinking about helping make it a simpler conversation around the data. So is there any point when we go back and we say, okay, now in the aggregate through your Qualtrics, it's representative of the fiscal year 2019 data that we used and reported on across the field?
I think Ryan's gonna have an existential crisis here.
I'm so sorry. Have a great week, everybody.
I think the short answer is not easily. We can make the
Okay.
visuals look more similar, but the data cleaning process is not automatable, unfortunately.
Okay.
Now, if you want to add to that, Ryan.
No, you did a great job of saying it simply. I was going to talk for 30 minutes and
I
have
saw
a
your
panic
face.
attack. Yeah.
Um, Basically, the weighting is dependent on some factors. We weight it, we clean for participation of the year, and we clean it for proportion of QR.
Mhm.
And I don't have confidence that we could do that in a way that would be dynamic and lasting and not static.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So thank you for the good question and great response, Allison. I'm just flagging that it is the end of the hour. I see people dropping off, but I just want to say a couple quick things. First of all, thank you for sticking with us. This was a great learning experience. Hopefully, you got your hands into the dashboard in ways that maybe you haven't before, and we explored some issues that we need to address. But the good news is we can address them, and now we know. And then you have the ability to go back and check on it later and do some more stuff with your data. And the second thing is, as you keep doing this, right, or as you reflect on this webinar or try some of these strategies out, we'd love to hear more, both about what's working and importantly, what's not working, right? If you're finding other errors or having other questions about, like, I can't remember how this was done, or gee, I could really use some more support in these areas, those are the things that we can continue to act on either through webinars or one-on-one calls. So go back and play with your dashboard, take a look at the aggregate report and try something out. Because that way, if you give us feedback, we can keep working on it to support you more in the future. But thank you all for sticking with us. This was a great turnout. Hopefully, we all learned something. I'm going to stop the recording, and you will soon see an invitation for October's webinar coming your way soon. So with that said, happy fall, everybody. Good seeing you. Take care.